woman, the way the time cold, I wanna be keeping you warm. I got the.
I'm putting on my shades to cover up my eyes. I'm jumping in my ride, I'm heading out tonight. I'm solo. Shawty's like a melody in my head that I can't.
Mama, I know I'm a demon. It ain't nothing she could do but pray for me.
Without being totally petty, before I actually even went into this woman's TikTok account to learn more about her, you can tell by looking at her that she has had a long-term alcohol addiction problem, and with clearly beer. Looks like it's her beverage of choice. And why I say that, there's like a body type that's usually associated with alcoholism, especially beer alcoholics. They have a lot of visceral fat, and it's a fat that develops around the organs, and it's to cushion the organs really from assault. And it's really dangerous. It's kind of like a body's like, listen, if I'm either gonna die, if I'm gonna die, this will kill me too, but this will give me at least like a better shot of surviving. Because there's like a repeated ongoing threat to the organs, and in this woman's case, the repeated ongoing threat to the organs is her self-poisoning through alcohol consumption. She talks about like she's a proud transgender mom, and she likes to, dance and da-da-da-da. And I don't know how long she's been sober, but
rock the boat, 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 left, right, left, right, come on, left, right, left, right, left, right, left. Ooh, baby, come on, you go wobble with it.
Whoa, if that's accurate, if she really got clean at 18, which was really in 1997, that means that this woman is 9 years older than me. 9 years older. Alcohol is toxic. It is a neurotoxin. It is toxic to literally every single organ system in the human body. Please, if you drink, it is an appeal to really get help or to stop or seek support. Just look at what alcohol, it ages you tremendously, and it ages you from the inside out. It ages your organs, it ages your brain, it creates calluses on the brain.
I can imagine one thing about like newly sober parents or parents who parented at a time when they were experiencing active addiction is they parent, a lot of times you'll see they parent from guilt, knowing that they were negligent parents, that they were like partying too much, and so they'll be like super permissive. And one thing that you see a lot in this movement, so there's a matrix of like parenting. There's authoritarian, which is like tiger mom, hyper strict. You're gonna, perform. You're gonna do this. Like I'm on top of you about everything. But then there's low warmth. Okay, so it's high discipline, low warmth. Permissive parenting style is high warmth, low discipline. And it's, oh yeah, oh honey, oh come and tell me about everything. It's the mom who wants to be the friend, who's hosting the alcohol parties. Oh, well, just come on over to my house. Okay, I'll get you guys a case of beer, but shh, don't tell your mom. Just sleep over, no big deal. And she's making sexual advances at the 16-year-old football captain who is friends with your daughter. And letting the boys and the girls all sleep over together and, probably have sex at her house. And so these are the types of parents that you should not really, really, really be careful about who in your children's friend groups have parents like this, because they are the ones that usually facilitate a lot of the most toxic behaviors in the kids' friend groups. And kids know that, and they sniff it out, and they always like to go to that parent's house because they can get away with whatever they want. These are the type of parents who will like lie for your kid to you so that your kid can get away with something that is dangerous for them. So high warmth, low discipline is permissive parenting. Then you have negligent parenting, that is low discipline, low warmth. Okay, and so when you're in active addiction, she was most likely a negligent parent. Okay, so low discipline, low warmth just wasn't there, wasn't available, wasn't monitoring, wasn't providing anything in terms of, materialistically or emotionally or any sort of structure. Now that she's sober, there's a lot of guilt. So now it's high warmth, no discipline. Because again, these types of parents see discipline as, how can I, I can't discipline him. I just want to be his friend now so bad. I just want a relationship. I'll give him anything he wants just so we can have a relationship so I don't have to feel guilty. Obviously this is dangerous. And then the ideal parenting style is authoritative, which is high warmth, high discipline, highly structured, but very loving. Okay. No, these are the rules, and I'm sorry, but this is what we're sticking by. This is the culture of the family, but I love you. I'm here for you. I want to listen to you, but I'm the mom, and what I say goes, but I love you so much. Authoritative.
So I hypothesize that a lot of the parents that we see involved in this movement are of the permissive, negligent, and authoritarian parenting types. So all three of the sort of negative parenting types. But that's just my hypothesis.
Bitch, I am healthy, I am wealthy, I am rich, I am that bitch. I am gonna go get that bag, and I am not gonna take your shit. I am protected, well respected, I'm a queen, I'm a dream. I do what I wanna do, and I'm who I wanna be, 'cause I am.
Hey mom. Yeah, I just saw your TikTok. The police are on their way. Yeah, no, they're on their way. 'Cause that should not exist ever.
If you haven't seen this video, you might want to go check it out.
As this woman will go on to describe, she has been embroiled in a long-term custody back and forth with her ex-husband. And one thing that is really common in contentious divorces and in contentious custody cases, where there's, and this is, I'm not talking about whether there is clear signs of spousal abuse or, an abusive father, but what will happen is both the parents will latch on to what makes their parenting style different and unique and what they think is right. And they will really latch on to this. And especially because, if anybody's familiar with the custodial court situation, knows that there are several layers of conciliation that is required before you even see a judge because of limited judicial resources, okay, right? Because, we know that divorce rates are high. There's a lot of, and even people who were never married, family courts are usually really overrun with people who want to just keep fighting, who can't reconcile outside of court, or come up with some sort of co-parenting plan outside of court. And so to sort of save on judicial resources, a lot of the family courts will set up that there's mediation processes, and they'll have different magistrates of the court who will handle and oversee certain conciliatory and negotiation processes that will hopefully yield some kind of custodial agreement. And she'll go on and explain how that they have one in place. And a lot of times If there's limited resources from the parents, they'll go pro se, which means they'll represent themselves in court. And I mean, you can file, if you are a legal guardian and if you are a parent and your rights have not been terminated, you can file every 3 months to amend your existing custody agreement. You can go back into court almost continuously until the child is 18 years old. And what we'll see a lot of times, and I just say this because I actually had studied for and taken my LSAT, which is like the law school equivalent of the SAT, and my sister's a lawyer. You'll go back and forth into court. And so you really, a lot of times parents think that what they need to do is to give the magistrate or the court official, whoever's seeing, even the mediator, give an argument as to why they are the more fit parent and what about their parenting makes them superior. And it's actually misguided, because any judge or magistrate who's worth anything can see when a lot of that's just like bickering back and forth and it's not productive, and they'll shut it down. But sometimes it's allowed to continue. And so what we'll see is in contentious separations, each parent will really latch on to what makes their parenting different and unique, and they'll really dig their heels in about it. Because they're trying to get an edge on custody, and they're trying to say, oh, well, look, and this is when all of a sudden you'll hear a lot of accusations of, neglect or abuse, and sometimes many times it's overstated, it's overblown. It's somebody who wants to get the court to side with them. And this is why it's so hard, because then true victims of abuse are ignored and they're looked at skeptically, because there are a lot of situations where men and women do it too, I've seen it, will look at something that that is something they don't agree with in terms of the parental decision making that their spouse or their ex-spouse is doing, and they'll frame it in a way that it's abuse, when really it's not. And so in this case, and you can already see it because she constantly makes these sort of bitter remarks about her ex, and a lot of it is proving how she's the fit parent. She recognizes the true nature of the child, and so to legitimize that she's truly the fit parent, and I'm guarantee you that she has really developed a case for herself that this is a life or death situation for her child, and her ex-husband is neglectful for not recognizing the transgendered, issues and needs for the child. But she's affirming of the child. She recognizes their need for medicalization, for social transition, and all these other things, and super affirmation. And she will most likely, and again, because the child's only 5 years old, as we'll see, and they have a long time, they have 13 more years of this, okay? And if they don't figure something out, they're going to be in and out of court that entire time. And if it were to come out that she was wrong, the court might start looking at her with a side eye, being like, well, are you trying to fabricate an identity for the child? Or are you being overbearing? Are you pushing? So she needs to be right. In her eyes, in her mind, she needs to be right about this transgender child, to show how, again, it is so necessary and important that she is given primary custody of the child, that she is able to make the primary medical decisions on behalf of the child, because it is a life and death decision. It is so important for the kid's well-being and all this sort of stuff, not taking into account the amount that we know upwards of 95% and above children desist with gender dysphoria. Gender dysphoria resolves on its own just as kids approach puberty. So let's see what else she has to say.
Cliff's notes, I talked about my assigned male at birth 5-year-old going to her transphobic father's house for visitation and having a panic attack because of it.
You're having a panic attack. This is like the Munchausen by proxy. This is your anxiety. It is so clear that she's the one with the anxiety over the father recognizing the child's transgender identity. And I promise you, and especially children at that age, are very connected with mothers, very connected with their parents, and really in tune with the parents' emotions. And especially with how much she talks about it on social media, she's obviously very vocal about it and expressive. The child is tapped into the level of anxiety that she has around affirming this child's identity. And he's also going to pick up on the antagonism of the father, that the father doesn't want what's best for you. He doesn't recognize that you are transgender. And it becomes about picking, whether it's conscious or not. Parents will really start to engage in the pick me. I'm the better parent. I'm the parent who knows you. I'm the parent who's best for you. And it's so selfish. The whole, oh, well, how was it at daddy's? Did he call you by your dead name? Typical of him, right? Oh my God. And probably arguing with him on the phone. And again, kids pick up on this. He's going to pick up on the fact that she is very emotionally invested in his identity, very emotionally invested in his transition, very emotionally invested in his role as the transgender child in her life. It is her anxiety. She's afraid. He's 5. He's 5.
I am very grateful that most of the comments were positive and supporting. I'm also really glad that there were only like 4 of these.
Yes, how offensive that somebody mentioned the father is a parent and has rights to the child too. How offensive to this woman. Jesus Christ. What's offensive is those fucking glasses. And I really try not to be petty. But holy shit.
I want to address some of the repeated comments. As far as sending her over there, I don't have a choice. We are divorced and we have a parenting plan. And in that parenting plan is a visitation schedule.
I don't have a choice means that, trust and believe, she has already tried to keep the child from going over there on the basis of the father not being aggressive with affirming this child's identity. What is that saying to the child? You're sending the message that your father, for not aggressively underscoring this is your identity and reaffirming this over and over, even developing it around you, is abusive. That's a very scary feeling for a child to sort of realize, wow, this parent who I care about and really depend on is abusing me because of this. It's a scary feeling for a kid. And this would kind of be the opportunity for her to bring up any other abuse that he was responsible for and she doesn't. So yeah, it sounds like her whole basis for him being unfit, digging her heels in about the transgender issue. And again, she sees that as her ticket to getting this kid, because as we know, there was at least one extremely publicized case of a Texas father who lost custody of his son because he was strongly opposed to medicalizing the child.
You're a boy, right?
No, I'm a girl.
Who told you you were a girl?
Mommy.
When did she tell you you were a girl?
'Cause I love girls.
Oh, I see. So mommy told you you were a girl?
Uh-huh.
Was divorced a few years ago. When my child hit his 3rd birthday, and this happened during the divorce, hit his 3rd birthday, he started telling me that he was a girl. Mm-hmm. And I immediately pulled out my video and videotaped him and asked him, why do you think you're a girl? Mm-hmm. You can see this video at SaveJames.com. It's the first time I heard about this.
Okay.
And what happened was all of his authority figures, right? His mom, his sisters, his older sisters, his teacher, the policeman at school, the librarian, the principals, the lunch lady, all of his authority figures were telling him he was a girl, and I was the only one, and me and his priest were the only one telling him that he was a boy. And he really just didn't believe me. And she started reading to him books about Jazz Jennings.
Jazz is transgender, a boy living as a girl, and one of the youngest documented cases of an early transition from male to female.
And she started reading him his books and setting that Jazz Jennings up as a hero for James. Mm-hmm. For some, unexplained reason, the judge decided that I should have all joint managing conservatorship except for one right.
Choosing his gender?
I cannot consent to psychological or psychiatric treatment for James.
Does mommy do anything else like with a girl with you?
Mm-hmm.
Like what?
Like dresses.
What does she do?
She do put them on me.
She puts dresses on you? Oh wow. And what else does she do?
She buys my headbands.
Uh-huh.
And she get me hair clips.
Oh, hair clips? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
What else?
Some microphones.
What else?
The second step in this Dutch protocol is they call it hormone suppression of puberty, but what it really is chemical castration. They use a drug called Lupron, and Lupron permanently sterilizes the young man that it's given to. My son will never be able to have children. It also halts the growth of their sexual organs, so he'll have a toddler penis for the rest of his life. Children who've gone on this at an early age aren't even able to do a sex change surgery because there's not enough penile tissue to do it.
And to affirming the child's transgender identity. And again, and it's such a shame because I feel like whereas maybe he would have been a little bit more lax about being gender nonconforming, I don't know the man, maybe he was always hardcore, but I feel like a lot of these custody battles force parents to become very radicalized in their position. He started to, like, you know, try to get support because again, he was really being ganged up on, because everyone was riling around her and like, oh yeah, you know, get the kid away from him, One thing I will say, he stuck with it. Okay, he really stuck with it. He even went to the point where he's like running for some kind of office to change laws to prevent minors from being able to medicalize with the consent of parents. And good for him. You know, I don't know how great of a dad he was. I don't know anything about him other than the fact that he continued to fight for his child. And I just think that, you know, he latched on to the one group that was the most supportive of him in his position, which were the sort of Southern conservatives. And they were the ones giving him, you know, the resource and publicity and support. And he raised a lot of money. And so he kind of almost had to, like, pander to that and be even more rigid in, you know, not allowing any sort of gender nonconformity or whatever. And then she had to go the opposite way, or had to, I don't know. You know, where she became more radicalized in her, this is my daughter and I'm going to reaffirm her, like she's the martyr laying on the cross because she's, you know, risked it all to, like, protect this transgender kid's identity. And this poor child is stuck in the middle. So stuck in the middle. He has to either choose between being, you know, totally your typical masculine boy, totally gender conforming, or totally gender non-conforming if he's to choose the mother. And, you know, medicalize and get breast implants and do all this sort of stuff as a child. And this is what we do to our children. We put them in these deep, you know, tug of war battles, and it is so sad. And this mom, I promise you, she's probably a nightmare to deal with in court.
I am very careful to follow the court order.
She is very careful. That means she's probably fucked up before and tried to go against it before, and she probably got some sort of court sanctions. You can be fined, you can, you know, you get threatened with losing some of your time with the child, so it sounds like she had something.
The parenting plan also allows him to opt out of visitation, which, you know, he does sometimes. More than you would think. A lot of people were saying to take him to court, which is awesome and all, and I appreciate that, but court costs a lot of money.
Not only does court cost a lot of money, but it costs a lot of money if you don't have a clear and legitimate reason to petition for full custody. If it's just because you don't like the way that he parents, you're going to be in and out of court for a long time. Then they'll let you keep filing. It's your constitutional right. As long as you're Parental rights haven't been terminated. You can keep filing. They'll keep having you back, and you'll keep dumping more money down the drain. But if you cannot clearly demonstrate how this child, and listen, I am not defending the family courts. I'm not saying they always get it right at all. They definitely don't. But it's another reason just not to let the government get involved in how we plan our families. And you can see, they are using the court as an apparatus, and they need to now arm themselves to the teeth with arguments as to why the other parent's unfit. And if we didn't have that, we would have no choice but to negotiate, right? So, yeah, it is a big waste of money if you don't have a really clear and convincing, and that you've got a really important case as to why the other parent's rights. All you're going to do is shift around what sort of time. You can make any changes to a parenting agreement as long as the other parent agrees. And it doesn't seem like a lot of her complaints of him are that he's super impossible to work with. So.
And we spent most of our marriage in court trying to get custody of his first daughter. That didn't happen. It is really hard to prove non-physical abuse.
Again, because your interpretation of you not liking the way that he parents is not abuse. He has just as much, if not more, of a case as to why you're abusive for latching on so heavily to this child's genitalia and what clothing they like to wear and their potential sexuality and a lot of other issues that are just so irrelevant to this kid's life.
A lot of you mentioned therapy and psychologists. The problem is that we need someone who not only specializes in transgender people, but also children. It's hard to find a psychologist for one or the other, so both?
Translation, the problem is we need somebody who is going to pander to your position. You don't want to hear that you're not in the right. No, you want one of these fake East Coast or California gender therapists that's going to agree with you and refuse to ask any questions. You want gender affirming care where it's, yes, honey, anything you want. But you don't want to match up with a therapist who's going to tell you that you are pushing this for reasons other than the best interest of the child. Let's be clear. Or how about this? All children have some level of gender expression. So anybody who's a child psychologist understands the fundamentals of what 5-year-olds need. And let me help you out. 5-year-olds are pretty simple at this age. They need consistency. They need authoritative parenting, which is a strong mix of very warm and loving parenting, as well as very strict and boundary-setting parenting. Exactly, because they're focused on pretty basic things like playing with toys and going outside and what time is bath time and I don't want that for dinner, I want this. Kids are not, their needs are simple, and what makes it complicated is because parents have complicated lives, and what kids really need is just simplicity. So you need to simplify your life. You need rhythm. You need consistency. You need firm, clear boundaries. They need primary attachments that are unconditional and unwavering. And being unconditional does not mean saying yes to everything. In fact, saying no is a really important part of letting kids know that they're safe, because it means that, guess what? Mom and dad are gonna say no to things that you might want, but it's not good for you. And we can see that. And we don't need you to like us, and we don't need to be the good guy to still do what's best for you. We're not very easy to push around or to manipulate, and that's good. And kids deep down feel good when they know that. Then mom and dad will do what's right no matter.
A few people mentioned telehealth, which is awesome, but 5-year-olds don't generally have the attention span to do things virtually like that. And for everyone who is saying that my kid is too young to know who she is, there have literally been studies on this. Chemicals in the brain are a crazy thing. Transgender women have the same chemical makeup as cisgender women. It's the same with men.
All right, so this is actually a really important study that she brought up, and it's one of the most misquoted and misappropriated studies that's very commonly and successfully employed by trans rights activists to justify why trans women are women, or the claim that trans women are literally women.
Oh, Lois just texted. Burgers or meatballs for dinner? I'll text back for you. Same thing, bitch. Just different shapes.
I don't really got no tights. I just wanna fuck all night. Baby, I need to know.
And it's the claim that trans women or trans-identified males and trans-identified females have brain structures that are more similar to that of their desired, the opposite sex, than that is typically seen within their own sex. And yet, if you actually read the words of the researchers themselves, you can see how this conclusion is clearly misappropriated and misconstrued. It's really important that we break this down, because they're not saying that trans-identified males have female brains, and that's what you hear. That's what it's gotten distilled down to. That's what the whole whisper down the lane, let's take this study and paraphrase it in a way that basically says what we wanted to say. The researchers never said that trans-identified males have identical brains to females, and they never said that trans-identified females have brains identical to males. What they said was, and I'm just going to say it. Let's look at the exact wording. All right, so this is from the Scientific American, and it says, male and female brains are, on average, slightly different in structure, although there is tremendous individual variability. Several studies have looked for signs that transgender people have brains more similar to their experienced gender. It's actually interesting, too. Just the fact that they said several studies have looked for signs that transgender people have brains more similar to their experienced gender. What kind of a bullshit study is that? So what the real scientific method does, anybody who is a legitimate scientist will take a question, and what they will do is they will develop a hypothesis, which is an educated guess, what they believe the answer to the question is. Now, they're not looking to prove their answer. They're looking to prove or disprove. You are supposed to have a non-biased approach. You are supposed to be ready to accept either way, whether your hypothesis is correct or whether you end up disproving your hypothesis, but you're not looking to prove it. If you are looking to prove something, you will be, there'll be selective bias, there will be confirmation bias, all sorts of bias that will be, instilled in the very foundation of your pseudoscientific study, and it'll no longer be scientific. So if they were looking to prove it, that's a problem, okay? Because you want an answer, and you're looking to create the answer and create the conditions that'll give you the answer. It's already problematic. So, all right, so it says, Spanish investigators led by psychobiologist Antonio Guillamón of the National Distance Education University in Madrid and neuropsychologist Carme Yonke Plaja of la Universidad de Barcelona used MRI to examine the brains of 24 female to males and 18 male to females. Okay, so right there, this is a very small study. It's tiny, okay? I don't know if it's been replicated. We'll look into that. So they used the MRI to examine the brains of 24 female to male and 18 male to females, both before and after treatment with cross-sex hormones. Their results, published in 2013, showed that even before treatment, the brain structures of trans people were more similar in some respects to the brains of their experienced gender than those of their natal gender. For example, the female to male subjects had relatively thin subcortical areas. These areas tend to be thinner in men than in women. Female to male subjects tended to have thinner cortical regions in the right hemisphere, which is characteristic of a female brain. Such differences become more pronounced after treatment. So what they're saying is that once they begin hormone replacement, these areas become more pronounced, and that would support the hypothesis that the whole notion of transgender brains, or that there are certain very minute structures, similarities between a transgender person's brain and that of their desired gender, and the gender with which they identify, right? Or the sex that they identify. The hypothesis is that in utero, fetuses undergo a puberty to develop the genitalia, the sex genitalia of that fetus, right? So for male fetuses, everything, the X is what's always present, okay, the X chromosome. And in male fetuses, the Y is something called the SRY gene, and that's when it activates, is when the fetus begins to develop as male, okay? And so fetuses go through a period of extremely elevated sex hormones so that they can develop the bodies of male fetuses into male bodies and female fetuses into female bodies. And there is a hypothesis that during this time, there is an influx of either androgens or the cross-sex hormones because of a hormonal disruption in the mother and in the perinatal environment. So what we also know is that during this puberty, this prenatal puberty, part of the influx of sex hormones is not simply only to develop the fetus physically, but also to prime the brain neurologically, so that there is some priming, some female priming that happens with the female fetus and male priming that happens with the male fetus. And the idea is that, for example, a male, even though he's activated his SRY gene, that he gets an influx of estrogen, and there was even a question of whether or not mothers who are taking birth control and exogenous estrogen for different reasons are more likely to have children, male to female transgender children. And there's several other hypotheses. That's just one aspect of a human being. Okay, that does not mean that he had, there you go, there you have it. He has a complete female brain. Okay, it would mean that he had some minor cross-sex brain priming. However, his SRY gene from the Y chromosome is still activated, which means he is still developing the genitalia of a man. He still develops the ability to go through the next two male puberties, one that happens within the first 6 months of birth, and another that happens between the ages, I think, of 12 to 14. What we know of adolescence, of teenage puberty, in which human beings sexually mature, and reproductively activate. And so, because they had some slight priming, does not negate that they are going to continue to have a wealth of testosterone-based priming, or that they will continue to grow with the bone density of males, or to be socialized as male, or to have the other inherited traits of being male. Okay, so if we are going to change this person's entire identity and physical existence based on some small cross-sex priming that is showing up in a brain scan, that is actually increased with hormone replacement therapy, so we're only further transgenderizing their brains. And if it's true that we can further transgenderize their brains, like they said, the effects of this are increased after treatment, then what about the opposite? Finally, the article says, trans people, and this is a quote from the lead researcher, GETTR, says, trans people have brains that are different from males and females, a unique kind of brain, GETTR says. It is simplistic to say that a female-to-male transgender person is a female trapped in a male body. It's not because they have a male brain, but rather a transsexual brain. Of course, behavior and experience shape brain anatomy, so it's impossible to say if these subtle differences are inborn. You understand the implications of that, correct? What they're saying is our brains develop and are impacted even by our experiences, okay? And we see that. We see that with people with severe PTSD. We'll have areas that look like brain damage. Okay, the same thing, people with addiction, have physically rewired the physical structures of their brain. You know, people with porn addiction. I mean, so yes, no, our experiences absolutely impact brain structure, brain functioning, and what these clinicians, what these researchers of the Holy Grail, Holy Grail science experiment and research paper that all of these trans rights activists love to refer back to is literally saying, oh no, it's not that it's a male trapped in a female body. They have a very slight, slight brains, and slight and very, specific localized structures have some potential brain differences, but we can't even confirm whether or not that's an inborn trait or something that develops, and it is something that develops through experience and through development. And if it's something that is exacerbated through hormone treatments, it's exacerbated. It is more pronounced. Those differences are more pronounced with hormone treatments, which would mean that the hormonal priming is what leads to this. Clearly, the implication is that by not doing these, that there is absolutely a way to try to restore balance. Why is it important? Everybody says, oh, well, why do we need to treat and transgender people? Why are we trying to treat them and make it go away? It would be so homophobic to say that about homosexuals, because homosexualism and homosexuality is not seeking to change, is not creating such distress to the individual that they are seeking out self-harm through surgeries. Okay? It is not causing such distress to the individual that they are seeking to literally endanger entire segments of the population just to accommodate their homosexuality. Even if there was a way to cure homosexuality, what would be the point? Okay, and really what we know is that homosexuality occurs in the human primate populations at similar rates to other primate populations, which gives us a pretty good clue that it is inborn, that it is a naturally occurring trait. Okay, and it's around 8% of the population is homosexual, and this is also what we see in primate populations that are similar to humans. Even if there was a way to cure it, we don't need to, because it's not causing distress. That's part of what, that's, for example, addiction criteria, whether or not, someone's substance abuse is actually disease versus just abuse. The criteria is it chronic, is it ongoing, and is it causing a severe disruption to the person's life? Is it, causing them to engage in behaviors that are really counterproductive to their well-being, to their safety, to their health? Is it disrupting the relationships, their other relationships? We know that already this young 5-year-old child's so-called transgender identity is already causing a disruption between him and his father due to his mother's insistence on promoting it. Yeah, there's a lot of issues. There's a lot of good reasons that if we can cure this in kids, absolutely we should.
Regardless, though, can we just let kids be kids?
Yes, we agree. Yes, please, can we? Can you stop with the parental alienation against this child's father, who, as far as I know, you've made no claims of him being abusive in any way, other than opposing your radical insistence on obsessing over this child's genitalia and their identity and what clothing they wear. Please stop putting this child in the middle of your anxious warfare and obsession. We agree. Wonderful.
Even if she hadn't been consistently telling us she's a girl for over 2 years now, who cares? What does my kid running around in a dress and playing with superhero action figures have to do with you? Why do you think it's hurting you? Why do you think it affects you?
Oh, well, let me help you out. You see, if you weren't on TikTok, if you weren't promoting this to, let's see, you have 11,000 likes, 344 comments, and 35 shares on this one video alone. Now, if you weren't on TikTok talking about your deeply personal issues related to your child and your family, we wouldn't know. I wouldn't I wouldn't even have the ability to comment. But you've added it to the public sphere and added it to the public discourse. So, yeah, no, we absolutely have the right to discuss it. And no, we don't have any obligation to agree with you. And in fact, it's important. We actually now, you've put an impetus on us, an obligation on us, an onus on us to openly disagree with you. Because we can't allow your toxic rhetoric to be the only standalone rhetoric. Now we gotta go and sit there and, oh God, everybody who's looking at this, no, she's she's wrong and insane. Please God, don't listen to this person wearing those glasses. Yeah, oh please God, no. So again, you know what you're doing, and there's a reason why you are called social media influencers. You know that you're putting it out there to influence people. And so you'll get a bunch of likes and you'll get the dopamine hit every time somebody applauds you for your brave decision. And we know that social media requires stuff that really stands out to get noticed. So it's got to be real bold and real, just being the normal parent who has a nice, moderate method of parenting that is simplified, that is not big and extravagant and attention grabbing. Well, that doesn't get attention. No, having the trans kid does. And this big, battle that you've created for yourself. And then, of course, well, any good story needs a villain. And so, we've got an X. He's great for that. Had you not put it out there, we wouldn't have to comment. But we do. Because what you're doing is dangerous. And so, why does it matter to us? Let me also help you out. It matters because parents now are risking getting their children taken away from them because of parents like you who've become rabid trans activists who have taken all of your time and pushed this issue so far to the point now that there is legislation being considered that could end the rights. And we even have an example of parents who have lost custody of their children, lost the right to make medical decisions on behalf of their child because of people like you. Why does it matter? Because what you're doing is affecting all of us. What you're doing is leading to legislation that's changing the way that we are allowed to parent with our kids because of people like you. The culture is changing and legislation is changing to make speaking out against this a hate crime. Scientists are being thrown out of academia if they even challenge these notions. We must speak up now. We are now past the point where we can just sit idly by and allow people like you to dominate the discourse. Why do we care? I mean, frankly, I wish the best for every child, and it breaks my heart that you're abusing your child psychologically. However, no, I don't care. I have my own children. Well, here's what concerns me. Okay, I have a 3-year-old who occasionally says that she's a boy. What if someone hears that and latches onto it and decides that I'm unfit because I don't want to sterilize her with puberty blockers, off-label use of prostate cancer drugs, and cross-sex hormones, and sterilize her, and hack up her body, and then I lose custody of her? That's why it matters.
Why do you think it's hurting you? Why do you think it affects you? I want you to sit with that for a minute and try and figure that out. Because there is something wrong with you if you are incapable of compassion and empathy towards a child.
Another place where we agree. Oh my God, you know what? I didn't expect to have this much in common with you, but I'm really glad that we're finding common ground. Because I agree. You are sick and there is something deeply wrong with you. If you don't have the compassion for a young, gender non-conforming child who does not want to have their body and bodily functions disrupted and destroyed simply because she wanted to play with the G.I. Joes,
nor did she want her mother to co-opt her experience and to weaponize it against her father in the court of law during a bitter divorce. She also doesn't want to be some bizarre accessory for you to garner attention on social media and to talk about her very private, personal issues for the whole world to see. So I agree. If only you would have compassion for a young child, your young child. You're sick. Yes, I know. Listen, your words, not mine. You know, I don't know if I wanted to keep this respectful, but you're the one who said it. And so I got to agree. There's something really wrong with you. Really deeply, truly wrong with you. My God. And here we go. Glitter families and the replacement family for children who have parents who are not immediately jumping to align with the trans lobby. Your parents won't give you what you want when you want it. Your parents know that 95% of gender non-conforming children and children who met the DSM-5 criteria for gender dysphoria desist. Oh, well, come over here. We are a collective of predators, and we will give you what you need to get around your parents' rules. Back in the day, they used to call you guys predators. Okay, you're predators. You're preying on children who are naturally rebelling against their parents. It is normal. And rather deferring to the parents who know the child. You're saying, oh, they won't buy you the alcohol? They won't give you a place to smoke the weed? They're not letting you hook up with your boyfriend? We'll do it. Come on over here. We'll be your glitter family. Toxic. Social media has destroyed not one, but now multiple generations. Because even the ones that haven't grown up with social media are being destroyed by it. These social media moms are so toxic, whose entire identity is about getting likes from strangers on a social media platform and using their children's stories, their children's pictures, whatever it is, to get it. And it's all about attention. It's all about, affirming each other, high-fiving each other. This is how social contagion happens. This is how cultism on a large scale happens. Glitter families. Predators.
Or, anyone. I love my kid more than anything in the world, and I will continue to support her as best I can. One of the ways I'm doing that is I am working with a charity called the Hi Dad Project. There's a link in my bio. We support kids in the LGBTQ+ community who don't have the support at home. We encourage them and we love them. We've created a community where they can love each other too. We help them find resources so that they can find professional help as well. Spread the love. If you haven't...
Then if that is so accurate, and that every single gender non-conforming child has a special transgender brain, then why is it that upwards of 95% of boys who met the criteria of having gender identity disorder or gender dysphoria desist after a certain amount of time? Desistance is defined as discontinuation. It's the opposite of persist. Desist. They stop pursuing a transgender identity. they started to identify with their natal birth sex, their actual sex, obviously has severe implications for the whole push to put children on puberty blockers. It's not a pause, okay? Puberty is not paused, because when puberty blockers are followed with cross-sex hormones, we know that it results in sterility 100% of the time. So I posit to you that a 10-year-old does not have the capacity to consent or to give consent to be permanently sterilized or infertile. And actually, the father in Texas who is applying, or who is running for governor or some level of public office, is doing so that he can help legislate or promote legislation that would prevent parents from medicalizing their children who are underage, and also prevent medical doctors from using puberty blockers and other sorts of surgeries to trans their child, or to trans the minor patient. So when everyone's talking about, oh, he's trying to, well, again, and I always say this, I'm going to say this again, when they talk about, you know, people trying to deny trans kids health care, when they say health care, they're talking about hormones so that they can achieve an aesthetic of the secondary sex characteristics of the opposite sex. When they're talking about trans health care, being denied trans health care, and it's an emergency, they're not talking about, and when they say life-saving affirmative care and life-saving health care and life-saving surgeries, they're not talking about a stent in the aorta. They're not talking about, insulin. They're not talking about blood pressure medication. They're talking about hormone blockers and hormones so that they can grow a beard and facial hair so that they can present. They're talking about getting a tracheal shave to get rid of their Adam's apple. They're talking about surgeries to invert their penis or to feminize their face or laser hair removal. These are the life-saving surgeries. This is the life-saving health care that they claim they're being denied. This is why it's important that we understand the language and what things really mean when they're being talked about in this context.